Hey, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of Live Without Training Wheels. I'm your host, Lynna Sutherland, owner and author at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels and homeschool mother of 8 kiddos, ages teen to toddler. I am thrilled to be joined here tonight by my friend, Beth Napoli. She's a homeschool mom of 5, and she's the owner of the site Techie Homeschool Mom and also Online Unit Studies. And we're going to learn more about Beth in a moment and all of the good wisdom she has to share with us tonight. But first, I'm going to do just a few housekeeping details to make sure that you're comfortable and enjoying the show. So we are actually here inside a platform called Crowdcast, and that's where Beth and I are interacting and where we're seeing comments and questions. If you are watching from Facebook or YouTube, because we're also live streaming to those locations, you are more than welcome to just hang out there and watch. But if you would like to participate in the discussion, you'll want to look in the video description for a link to join us inside the Crowdcast event so that you can ask questions and share your comments as we go through the show. Your best engagement is going to be on a desktop or a laptop because, thumb typing. But if you are watching on a mobile, that's perfectly fine. You'll just want to turn it into landscape mode and then click the little square in the top right corner so that you can see full screen view and tap view chat, and you'll be all set up and good to go. Now, one of the fun things about Crowdcast, if you are with us here in the Crowdcast event, is that we have a poll. And actually today we have 2 polls down at the bottom of the screen. So if you look right there underneath, kind of on my screen, it's like right underneath where Beth is, it says polls. Click that button and pull it up. And there are a couple of anonymous polls that you can answer. And it's just kind of fun to give us an idea of our audience. And the first question is related to how old your oldest child is. So Beth, it looks like we've got folks on here who are in the upper ages of homeschooling. We've got 50% are in the 9 to 12 range and 50% are in the 13 to 18 range.
Okay.
And then level of comfort with technology, we're evenly split amongst we don't get along, I'm getting the hang of it, and I've got this. So we've got a variety of folks here. So if you're just coming in, feel free to answer that poll anytime during the video. And then right next to the polls button is the Ask a Question button. We've already got a couple of questions. I had a feeling this might be a hot topic tonight. And so when we finish talking, when Beth and I finish chatting, we'll go through and we'll answer those questions. Sometimes we have a chance to get to all the questions. Sometimes we don't. It just depends on how many there are. So if you have a question, definitely go ahead and drop it in. And then if you see a question that you like, one that you'd really love to hear answered tonight, make sure to click on vote because you can upvote that question. So when Beth and I dive into the Q&A, we'll begin with the ones that look like they're going to be of the most use to the most people. So if you want a particular question answered, make sure to cast your vote in favor of that question. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. Beth, I'm so glad you could be here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Could you just begin by giving us a little bit of background? Tell us about yourself, your children. How did you get into this whole techie homeschool mom business? Okay, on my end, it looks like Beth's screen is frozen. Does anybody else see that? I'm not sure if you guys can tell. We'll wait for just a moment in case Beth needs to hop off and hop back on, or anybody who's watching, if you could let me know in the comments if it looks like maybe I'm frozen, maybe Beth is still talking. Okay, my screen says that we're waiting for Beth Napoli to reconnect. Okay, Beth is the only one who's frozen on your screen. Okay, well, while we wait for Beth to reconnect, then I just want to let you know that if you are watching this from on the blog page, the show page on my blog, right below, after the show, you're going to want to scroll down and take a look in there. I've listed some resources there. If you're concerned about the dangers of digital, if you're concerned about screen time, things like that, we've had a few questions about that. then you can go ahead and check out some of those resources later on. Hey, Beth, welcome back.
Hey, this is Techie Homeschool Mom would be having tech trouble, huh?
That's right. Okay. Well, we're just going to be patient tonight because who knows? Just to keep things interesting.
Okay, so hopefully everybody can relate.
Yeah, I had a professor in college. It was like a speaking class, and we were learning to give presentations. And he said, it's always, if you can use technology in your presentation, that's great. But just remember, when you use technology in your presentation, nothing can go wrong. Go wrong.
Exactly. Okay, well, I will start over introducing myself. So anyway, I'm a homeschooling mom of 5 daughters, and we have been homeschooling for a very long time, over 15 years, because my oldest daughter is now 20. My youngest is 10. And we started Techie. I mean, I've always been into like using softwares and different programs, and I love the internet. I'm not really techie in regards to hardware goes, obviously. Problems we're having today, but yeah, so always interested on how to use digital resources in our homeschooling. And I found that, friends were starting to come to me asking about online resources for their homeschooling. And that's when I realized, hey, I can do something with this. I should maybe start a blog or something to share with other families. So I have a blog, Techie Homeschool Mom, where I inspire and equip families to add more digital learning into their homeschooling. Because if you think about it, in schools, the school will have somebody on staff who's like the IT specialist or into the, online learning or how to use the different softwares and things. And we don't have that resource as homeschoolers. So
that is so true.
We are relying on each other to share ideas. I share ideas. I have a very vibrant community on Facebook called Tech in Your Homeschool, where we bounce off a lot of ideas for online learning.
Mm-hmm. And that is a great group to be a part of. I will put a link to that in the show notes, because if you're not in there and you want to be, you definitely should come hang out with us.
Yes.
Good conversation. It's the place to go if you're like, okay, how do I get this? Or is there an app that does that? Or
right. And the neat thing, what I hear from a lot of our members is that it's a place where they feel safe to talk about technology, because it's poo-pooed in some other groups that they're in, and they almost feel like they have to be closet techies, because they're using ebooks instead of paper books or whatever. So
it needs to be paper, and the pages have to be kind of yellowed, and it needs to be written more than 150 years ago. And right. So okay, well then let's jump in, because my first question was, tell us some about the concerns that you hear from moms, maybe not so much within the Tech in Your Homeschool group, because those are folks that are a little more technology comfortable. But, when you talk to moms about, oh, yeah, you can include digital learning in your homeschool, what are some of the concerns that people have, or the maybe objections that people might have to that?
Well, this isn't something that people vocalize necessarily, but it's what I recognize is that oftentimes it's just because we don't know how to use digital resources. So our generation, this generation of moms right now, we are digital immigrants. We were not born into this techie society with the internet. And, I often run a thread of question, okay, share the first time you used a computer, and people remember that.
I do.
Our kids are digital natives. This is just how the world is to them. They don't know life without the wide world web.
Yeah.
Some of our older kids, my oldest daughter remembers when, she wasn't going online so much or, using digital resources for homeschooling, but my youngest daughter does not. It's always been a part of it. So I think with that comes a bit of a lack of confidence for parents in using it for their homeschooling, and also too, because we've been in this world where we've been seeing tech evolve, that there were a lot of problems in the past that aren't necessarily an issue now. But we're still stuck in that stigma as there are the problems. You know, one thing I'm thinking about is internet safety. And, you know, a lot of parents sharing, oh, I don't want my kids online because they're going to see something they shouldn't. Well, nowadays, and 10 years ago, I was the same way. I mean, my child would not go on YouTube, no how, no way. When it was I think it's maybe about 8 years ago. Anyway, but the point is, as
All right. Looks like Beth is frozen again. It's a shame because she was in the midst of a really great discussion about internet safety that I'm sure folks are going to want to hear more about. So we'll just wait for a second and let her log back in. And if you're a praying person, just say a prayer that whatever this technology issue is, Beth and I did all the right things beforehand to get set up. And I don't know what it is with the connection tonight that's just being persnickety and challenging. We've got some great questions already being asked in the Ask a Question box. So if you see something that looks interesting to you, definitely upvote it, because we will get to as many of those questions as we can at the end. All right, let's see if we can get Beth back on the screen. Hope this will work.
okay.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know what the last thing.
So the last thing that I heard was that you were talking about how, 8 or 10 years ago, you never would have let your daughter on YouTube or just let them loose on the internet because internet safety was a concern. You want to
right, and it still is a concern. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that it's not an issue and that there's not bad things online, but now there's a lot more precautionary measures that we can take. There's, filters and that sort of thing. So there's just a stigma in our generation. There's a stigma with, the internet and digital resources. The concern, my child's going to become addicted if I let them play video games. I hear that a lot. But, what I hear a lot too is, I don't want to deal with the tech problems if something happens with my computer, like I'm doing a video and we get frozen or whatever, I don't know what to do and how to fix it. So it's just that it's not as second nature, not as natural to us as it is to our kids. But if we avoid it because of our issues with technology or our attitudes, if we avoid introducing it to our kids, we are doing them a disservice big time, because it's not going away. It's not. The technology's here to stay. It's, how they're going to be learning in the future in jobs and for higher education. They need to learn that technology is a tool, not a toy. It's not something that's like set aside and we have special time in the day that we can be, using the computer. No, it needs to be a part of your life so that they don't end up growing up with some of those same attitudes and the stigma that we have with it.
Yeah. And they're going to, when they go to college or get a job, then they're going to be expected to be interacting with those tools. So it's really not a service to them to, not take time while they're in the home to walk alongside them with those tools.
Right. And they need to be comfortable with it. Yes. Not every child's going to be a computer programmer. That's not what I'm talking about. But you know what? Your child who's going to be a waitress, she needs to be comfortable going up to that monitor and pressing those buttons and knowing she's not going to break everything. And, that's what they need to at least be acclimated to it.
Sure. So, okay. So then the flip side of that is, what would you say, and you've already touched on this a little bit, but what are some of the advantages of taking online classes?
Oh, so many advantages. First of all, there's the advantage of it's easier for us. Okay. So
just be honest.
I know, especially as your children are getting older. And to be honest, I advocate that, online learning, digital learning shouldn't really be happening until a child's maybe like mid-elementary. It depends on the maturity of your child. But definitely into the junior high, middle school, high school years, I think it's really important because that's when the kids can have discernment on how they use it and, the steps they take to stay safe and keep your whole family safe and that sort of thing. But so there's one advantage right there is as your child is doing online classes and using online tools and resources for their homeschooling, they are learning habits that will last them their whole life. So they're recognizing that the computer isn't just for games and fun, that it's, a way that I can learn. It's a way I can find information. It's a way that I can create things. And so that's one advantage is that it's just integrated more into their life and not something that's, set up on a pedestal. And then the ease of use for us, there are people who are experts about things that we are not. Okay. As homeschooling moms and dads, we don't need to feel like we need to know everything. Okay. I consider myself a guide for my children. So I'm not their teacher. So there's something they need to be learning, something they're interested in. I will facilitate that learning for them, but I'll find another expert to teach them. So, and I get to learn alongside them oftentimes too. So that's another advantage that I love. And then of course, there's the preparation for a future of a lifelong attitude of learning, knowing how to learn, how to find information online, how to interact with online classes. I mean, I've got my oldest daughter, she did her full
Okay, I think we might have another mini intermission here. Let's see if we can get Beth back on the screen. So she's accepted and connecting. There we go.
All right. Sorry about that. I think I found the culprit.
Oh, yeah?
Misunderstanding with the...
Oh, my goodness.
Oh. So, anyway, where were we?
You were talking about your oldest daughter.
Oh, yes. And just she got her associate's degree fully online. So, never need to go over to the college. We live on an island. It would require a ferry ride, 3 hours of her day to go to her classes. Whereas she was able to just do it all in her PJs up in her room and still be working and all that. So,
but what about homeschool socialization?
Yeah. What about it? You know what? That time she saved, like I just mentioned, she was working. She was interacting with people at the coffee shop all day long.
Yes. I'm kind of joking, but
I know.
It's that thing everybody tosses out.
Well, and a big part of these online classes that my daughters are taking at college is discussions. It's like they read the book, they maybe watch a video lecture, they submit the papers, but every week they have these discussions where they have to share their point of view, and then they have to respond to 2 other people. So, they're learning how to interact with other people.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's funny because, maybe you're thinking like, oh, but we need to know how to interact in the real world. Well, that's kind of how my husband does meetings at his work. Some of their is in Richmond, some of their team is in Jacksonville. And so they have meetings where it's kind of like a giant group Skype, that they're
right.
And so that's real life. That's not just like a one-off, like random. That's what they do regularly.
That reminds me of something that happened with us last week is that, so my daughter's on a robotics team, and part of the competition, the kids need to create this technical document. And so I actually had the 5 of them sitting here on my couch, all with their laptops, so that I could teach them how they can be interacting with each other outside of the 6 hours a week that they're physically together, because it's getting down to crunch time for the competition. So I'm telling them, okay, you can create this document. You can save it in Google Drive. You can leave comments if you want one of your teammates to look at it or clarify something that you're not sure about this technical part of it. And this can all happen, you know, as you're at home on your schedules and not waiting for your Thursday or Friday meetings.
So this totally falls into the category of like the teach a man how to fish kind of stuff. Like, yes, you're accomplishing this one particular project, but the learning is going to have implications to like basically any other project or thing that they'd be working on beyond that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So just a real practical thing that parents have asked about is like, okay, theoretically, this sounds fine. Maybe I've gotten over my anxiety about online, but we have one computer or one device. How do I manage like 3 kids? If I do math online, like, am I going to hate myself 3 months into the school year?
Yeah, you will if you have just one computer. So
that's the answer then. Okay, check Amazon.
That is the answer. So if you just have one computer, if you have a poor internet connection, online homeschooling isn't for you. But I give you permission, and you can tell whoever manages the money in your home to set aside part of your homeschool budget to buy more computers. Okay, it can be a homeschool expense for you. And you can make up by it by, you know, finding free YouTube videos to learn about stuff, you know, other free resources online, or, you know, tapping in. Neat thing about digital curriculum is a lot less expensive than physical. Okay, sure. There's no shipping costs. The creator of that, and I know because I create online courses, I don't have any cost of goods. You know, like it didn't cost me anything but my time to create that.
And you don't need a shelf full of inventory in a back room somewhere.
And, so I can offer it to you at a lower price than if I had it printed, you know, or like and I'm not just talking about courses like mine, but ebooks too. So, you know, you are going to save some money. There's some expensive live online courses and academies, but, you know, you can avoid them. There's a lot of cost-effective things as well. So, and when I say you need more devices, don't get all freaked out. Oh my goodness, you know, how am I going to get, you know, $600 computers? Well, that's not what you need. An iPad would work fine, and you can get an old generation one, even like a certain.
I bet she was going to say certified refurbished. All right. So I'm sure Beth is going to talk about this, but go ahead. So there you are.
I was saying you can get a certified refurbished computer or device. Don't be scared of those. They are certified. I mean, if it doesn't work, that, you know, you'll get another one. I mean, they've been tested and all that, so you can return it if it doesn't work for you. Chromebooks. I love Chromebooks for homeschool computers. And I think, isn't that what you use, Lena? Do you have Chromebooks?
Yep.
And that you can get a Chromebook for $150, $200. It's not going to be the best, but where Chromebook is different than a laptop is it's just for online resources. You can't have software on there. So if you're doing video editing or anything like that, you would need a laptop. But the Chromebook will really suffice if you're doing online classes, if you're doing, you know, using ebooks, if you're just, you know, watching videos, streaming videos, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And even like 5 years ago, you know, digital courses, often you're talking like a CD-ROM and you load it into a CD-ROM drive. And now everything's moving towards streaming. So when we started with Chromebooks, there were things where like we use teaching textbooks. And at first I thought, oh, that's not an option for me because they all have these CDs and we can't do that. And then within the last year, now they're offering streaming. So anybody on a Chromebook can totally access that.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And then one thing I would like to say, or well, two other things. One is I highly recommend that you get either that whatever you get is portable. Okay. Desktops, I don't recommend desktops for homeschooling because, you know, you want to be able to take it with you on the go, or, you know, for a child to come to you. If they're having trouble with something, they bring it to you and ask you
Oh,
for
that's a
help,
great point.
not expecting you to go to where they are. You can, you know, you can dictate, you know, younger kids, you need to do your learning right here on the couch, whereas the olders can go, you know, to a quieter place if they need it, that sort of thing. So, and then another thing is if really all you have is one computer and, you know, you can only have one, you do have the opportunity for family schooling, which I know Lena talks about a lot. And how you can do that is get set up with a device that will cast whatever is on your computer screen to your television. But you need a big TV for that to make it a good experience for anyone. So, yes.
Yep. You can cast it, or you can, if you sit close, you can just hook up with an HDMI cable a lot of times if you're.
Right. Yeah. And I'll give Lena a link, or I'll drop it here, of a blog post I have about the different options for casting, or, you know, watching your lessons on your computer or your
Perfect.
TV. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay. So we already talked a little bit about this, but, you know, one of the concerns families have is security. And you were talking about how recently, not that that's not a concern anymore, but it's not foreign territory. Like there's so many options out there. So
there is.
You have a few ideas of things that you've done in terms of filtering or monitoring or managing web time.
Okay, well, this is where I'm going to throw myself under the bus. So first of all, you need to recognize that I have older children, although they haven't always been older. But I do not, I mean, I've got one filtering program on our computers, but I don't regularly check it. I don't monitor my kids. I've taken the approach of teaching my kids how to have healthy tech habits, letting them make mistakes so that they can learn from those mistakes, and being actively involved in their online lives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't have anything beyond the standard safe search. You know, and anything that I can have settings on for searching, it's locked. It's, you know, as high as it can be, but I don't block websites. I don't whitelist and all that sort of thing. And that freaks some people out, but I would rather that my kids learn to self-govern than me govern it for them. So I don't keep track of, you know, I don't tell my kids, oh, you have an hour a day to use a computer. Okay. Our kids have unlimited tech time after they satisfy some certain requirements, though. And I really hate calling it unlimited tech time, because really it's unlimited free time to do what they would like with themselves. Sometimes they choose to do things online. Sometimes they choose not. Mm-hmm. It's just whatever they're into right now, or, you know, in that season. And so the computer is more of a tool for them than this thing that's, like I mentioned before, up on this pedestal and set aside as a entertainment kind of thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes we inadvertently create that in our home when it's like, you know, it's the golden hour of the day, and this is the one time when you get to use this, and, you know, it kind of becomes like forbidden fruit. Like it's so much more desirable because we're never allowed to use it. And it's kind of funny because we set it up as the carrot, and then we get all upset when our kids are like motivated by this carrot. It's like, well, you set it up that way. You made it the thing that they're supposed to be motivated by. So why are you freaking out that they're like rushing through their math to get to Minecraft? Because that's how you kind of like set their day up.
Yes, exactly. And I will clarify with that. When I say my kids have unlimited time, you know, that I don't designate they can only have so much time online or on the computers. I do have a time limit for what we call techertainment. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that mindless time of just, you know, playing a video game that really is not helping them develop in any skills or that sort of thing, or just, you know, watching shows. They do have a limit on that, just like I would if it was just the TV. I'm looking up at my TV as I'm talking. But I've helped them. I did a little experiment a few years ago because I was freaking about how much they were on the computer. And I took I think it was 24 or 48 hours. And I paid attention to what they were doing. And I made a list of the different things that they were doing. And when I was done, I looked at that list and I'm like, okay, I mean, this is good. They are growing, they are learning, they are interacting with other people. And I even developed 3 questions, that we ask ourselves, about, is this productive time or not? Or is it techertainment? Mm-hmm. 1, am I learning a new skill or growing in a talent I already have? The other question is, am I interacting with somebody else, either in a healthy way, either online or even right next to me? Mm-hmm. And then the third question, oh my goodness, am I creating something?
Yeah, okay? I love that one.
Those are all productive things that can be done digital or analog. It's just in our day and age, the digital wasn't, when we were kids, the digital wasn't an option. It was Legos. That's what we built with, right?
Right.
Okay. Now it's Minecraft, putting blocks together, creating a world, playing in that world. Okay, Legos. And my kids go through phases where it's all about Legos. And then for a month, it's all about Minecraft and back and forth. They're building, they're interacting, they're creating. It just looks different than it did for us.
Yeah, it is a personal pet peeve of mine when people talk about screen time as like this one giant bucket, because I feel like I want
paper time.
Well, so I want to say, okay, so my husband who works on spreadsheets has 8+ hours of screen time a day.
Exactly.
Because he's working on a computer. But, I don't think anyone would be like, okay, Matt, you've had 8 hours of screen time. That's enough. Don't watch any Netflix with your wife tonight,
Right.
Because it's not the same. It's not all one big giant lump of stuff.
Right. Yes. And my big thing is so who talks about paper time? Okay. You come into my house and you see my daughter with her nose on a tablet. Okay. And then this has happened for a family member. Oh, she's always on the computer. And I'm like, okay. So if she's reading a book right now. So if it was a paper book, would you walk in the house and say, oh, she's always got her nose in a book and she shouldn't have any more paper time?
Right.
No, nobody would say that. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'll get off my pedestal, my
I know
soapbox there.
It's one of mine too.
I always say, call it what it is. Don't call it screen time. Call it game time. Call it building time. Call it reading time. What are they doing? Call it that, and then see if you have as big a problem with it. Call it learning time. They're in their class time right now.
Right.
Do you have a problem with it when you call it those things, or just when you call it screen time?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It really kind of peels the lid off and helps us to look at what actually is going on underneath there.
Yep.
So if we get down to actually choosing online courses, how do you know what's going to be a good, what are we evaluating here? I mean, it's not like, okay, I can go to the homeschool convention and I can crack open this textbook and I can flip through and see what the chapters are like and see if it's colorful or whatever. What are we evaluating if we're looking for online classes?
Okay. First of all, one cool thing is that, and I wish all course creators did this, is you can often see previews of it. Okay. And if they don't offer a preview, ask. If you can get a limited 1 week access to the course to take a look at it. Whenever I launch a new course, to be honest, during my launch period, I usually have a 24 to 48 hour period where I open up the whole course for anybody to see in it, because I know you want to go and look at that book and flip through and look at everything. And so it's the same thing. And I'm not scared that you're going to do the whole course in those few days and not buy it from me because okay, kids, for 24 hours, we're gonna
nothing but this course.
Yeah. And so you can get previews. Oftentimes, online courses are created by the person who's actually teaching it, and they're really invested in answering your questions. And so don't feel shy to reach out to that person and ask specific questions. Tell them your situation. These are my child's strengths, my child's weaknesses. Would this be a good fit for them? So, feel confident about that. Whereas you're not going to like write to Houghton Mifflin or whoever's creating the textbook, and want to ask them questions like that. And, a course creator would be happy to answer those questions. So, see a preview,
good point.
see if you can get a trial, reach out to the publisher of it, so that you can find out as if it fits, but also you need to consider, there's different kinds of online classes. Okay. So
right.
First you need to consider, the age and the maturity of your child, and, make sure it's something that's created for their age. Like, so for example, my online unit studies, they're for, mid-elementary up to middle school. People ask me, can my high schooler take it? And I'm like, sure, but they're not going to be challenged. They're going to have to challenge themselves to expand it. So I really wouldn't recommend it. So consider that. And of course, you're going to consider the subject matter. Is it something that my child or that we need to learn? Maybe you have some state requirements and that sort of thing. But another big one, which I don't think people realize, is you have to consider there's live classes and then there's self-paced classes. So a live class is one that an instructor will be on, online at 10 o'clock Central Time on Thursdays. Okay. And your child needs to be there. It's like going to a co-op. Your child needs to be there at that time that day to get the instruction. And so if that fits with your lifestyle, that's a great way to learn, because your child is then interacting with the instructor during the classes. They are interacting with the other students and that sort of thing. But then there's self-paced classes where you don't have to necessarily log in at a certain time. That's how my classes work. You can, do it at your own pace. Sometimes instructors will release a new lesson each week and you do it whenever you can during the week. Sometimes you buy that course and you have access to it forever, so you need to consider those kinds of things. I made a bunch of notes here. Oh, of course, consider how long you're going to have access. Also, as you're looking on different websites that offer classes, is it an all-in-one program? Maybe that's what you need. Maybe you're a working family or you're going through a time in your life where you really cannot invest a lot of time. You want your kids at home, but you don't have the time to invest in really teaching them. And so that's where you would find like an online private school, or even, the public schools. The K-12 programs, pretty national, will offer. And the thing with that, though, is then you're answering to somebody else. You're not having as much freedom in what your kids learn and how they learn. But that's what I have one friend that's what works for their family, because both she and her husband work, and their daughter can, go with them to work, but she's home, she's with them. She's at school. That they didn't have a good school experience. So there's those all-in-one programs, but then there's a lot of places where you can find one-off programs, or classes about a certain subject. And I'll leave the link, or Lena can share it somehow. I have compiled a list of over 150 websites where you can find online classes.
Whoa.
And it's sortable. I've created it so that it's in Google Sheets, really techie, where you can sort and filter it. So you can say, okay, I want something for, 5th to 8th grade in English that is self-paced, and you can sort or filter the list and see your options there, and then dig a little.
Whoa.
So
that's a cool resource. Okay. Yeah.
With everybody.
Yeah. Definitely share that with me, and I'll put it in the show notes for the, for this show.
Yes.
That is super cool.
Okay. One caveat though, if you get that list, don't expect that I know how good the classes are. People will email me. It's like, no, I haven't tried all these.
You haven't taken classes from all 150 sites?
No, nor have I forced.
You've got 5 kids.
Forced my children to. There are sites that I love. OutSchool is a great place to find individual courses. I love that. I love Scrafty, which is a Minecraft server that has classes. You pay a subscription, and you are able to, all the classes have a Minecraft build related to it. So the kids will learn, my daughter did a zoology class. She used the Apologia zoology book, but then she created a zoo in Minecraft each week, the different
How cool is that?
animals. So, and of course, I love my courses, online unit studies, and yeah.
Okay, so perfect segue. I'm going to put a little green button right here below where Beth and I are talking, whatever it is we're doing. And that link will take you over to Beth's site. Now, all of the things that she's talked about tonight, like the articles that she's written and also her online unit studies, this link will take you just right to the front page of her website. So you can search for those, or you can click the link. What does it say at the top of your site to get over?
Or courses.
Shop. Courses. Okay.
So.
And that'll take you over to the list of her online unit studies. Give us just like a 2-minute synopsis of like what is an online unit studies course like?
Okay, so online unit studies were born out of the unit studies that I created for my kids. That's how we homeschool when they're younger. We don't anymore because they're not interested anymore. But anyway, I took what I had taught them and I created it. So over the years, so when we started homeschooling with unit studies, it meant going to the library and like getting hundreds of books about the topic. And, I'd plan everything from that. But, in the 5 years ago, I was finding all those resources online and I needed a way to share them with my kids besides, here, let's crowd around the one computer to do it. So I created, the unit studies for them in a digital format. So they advance through lessons, they visit websites, they watch videos related to the topic. And then they do, there's discussions within it. And they also do digital projects. So maybe creating a time travel journal, but it's, using a slide presentation software, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of hands-on projects as well in the unit studies.
One of our favorites was the Mona Lisa. What is that called?
The parody.
The Mona Lisa parodies.
Yeah.
So we had some interesting variations on a theme.
Yeah.
And I loved that it was just like you log in, you print out this thing, like there aren't 600 supplies to collect and no trips to the library. Just it's for the most part right there on your computer. Yeah, okay, so that sounds interesting.
That's from the Famous Artists, Volume 1 online study.
And just like Beth said, creators love to be asked about what they've created. So if you've got questions, absolutely be sure to, you can contact Beth through her site, or you can find her on Facebook, Techie Homeschool Mom, and definitely look for that group, Tech in Your Homeschool. So we're going to hop into our, go ahead.
Add one other thing. I also have a course for Techie Homeschool Moms. It's my guide to digital homeschool organization. And I open up registration for that a couple of times a year. So if that's something that interests you, be sure to get on my email list so that you'll know when that's open. But I teach you how to get your tech set up so that it's, streamlined for your family, how to sync devices so a child can pick up any computer to do their work, how to organize all those digital downloads you get, and how to create an inventory so you can remember what you have, because that's a big problem for people not remembering the digital things.
Right. That's right. Yeah, you come across it later and like, I didn't even use that when we did ancient Egypt.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So like I said, we're going to dive into the questions that we've got. If you've got more, go ahead and feel free to ask them. It's not too late. And if you see ones that you really want to hear answers to, vote for them. If you are watching this on the replay, one of the cool things about Crowdcast is that you can, it doesn't show up now because we're live, but in the replay, there will be a button next to each question that says go to answer, and you can click that button to jump right to the answer to that question. So if you're looking over the questions and you see something that's of particular interest to you, you can hop right to the place in the video where we discuss that. And also, if you're interested in watching future Live Without Training Wheels episodes, hover over my name up there where it says Lina at Live Without Training Wheels and follow me, and you won't receive tons and tons of emails. You'll just receive one email whenever I go live. Crowdcast will just shoot out an email and say, hey, Live Without Training Wheels is on. So let's jump into these questions. First of all, Victoria says, how do you handle high school transcript writing when using an online curriculum like IXL.com?
Okay. Well, me personally, I don't do high school transcripts. We are very relaxed homeschoolers, almost unschoolers. But for those people who do need to do that, and this is an advantage of using online, or something you need to consider when you're looking for online courses, is to use ones that has some kind of parent dashboard or some way that it's keeping track of what your students learning. And so I don't know if IXL does that or has that for you. But I would think you could go in and just, see what skills your child has developed and maybe even how much time they've spent on it and add that to your transcript. If you're using an online course or a program that doesn't do that, then you would want your student to be logging the time that they're spending in the classes. So there's lots of apps that can do that. So your child will have their phone next to them, and when they, start on their science, they would click on, it's the same thing my husband uses. He's a contractor. So when he starts a job, he logs in. When he ends the job, he logs out. So he knows how to bill for it. Your child can use an app like that for tracking their time doing their different subjects. Also, screenshotting could be your best friend if there's not, any kind of dashboard. So when your child starts a new lesson, they could do a screenshot of the topic of it and then save it to their drive, share that with you on Trello. There, different ways they could share that. And you could kind of keep a folder of those things.
Smart. Yeah, those are some good suggestions. All right. All right, here's a good one. Lisa says, I just today checked out a book from the library on a friend's recommendation called Glow Kids. And so far, the author is comparing the effects of screens to highly addictive drugs. The book seems to be well-researched with extensive notes and references. Obviously, I can't make an informed judgment call yet, having only just started reading, but I would love to hear your opinion on this topic and how you arrived at it. She says, in addition, she says, I hope this isn't too hot a topic. I just want to be able to consider multiple perspectives as we think about how to use tech in our family.
Right. Okay.
So she's not trying to throw a skunk on the table, but she would love to hear your your thoughts about that.
Yes. Okay. So one thing about it's a love-hate with the World Wide Web of, all this knowledge that's out there. You are going to read, there's research that says the opposite. There's research that says, yes, it is like being addicted to drugs. There's research that says it's not. So, you've got to be really discerning. And this is a skill we need to teach our kids too, by the way, of how to be discerning, taking the different resources and all that. But my attitude about, and mind you, I've done no research. This is just my private research in my home with my family. Is that I know that there are some people who are more prone to having compulsive, addictive behaviors. And whether it's, time on the computer, video gaming, food, money, compulsive spending, that there are people wired like that. So yes, especially like with online marketing and that sort of thing, all that video games, they're created to keep you playing and keep you going. And so if somebody can't regulate things like that, yes, they're going to have a big problem online. But I don't think we are ruining our kids or ourselves by using the computer. That's just my opinion, my observation. It may all come bite me in the behind, 20 years from now, but that's what I'm going with. Because, man, it makes my life so much more efficient, being online. And so if you have a child who has trouble self-regulating, then you need to help them regulate. You need to teach them. You need to be involved in their lives. First of all, you need to set a good example. That's a big one right there.
True.
And you just need to be involved, not in and really Okay, at the heart of every issue is an issue of the heart. And so you need to consider your child really what is going on in their heart in regards to the time that they're spending playing that game or reading those ebooks or watching those YouTube videos, and address that. I have one child who is prone. Well, let me back up too, is we've lived through computer addiction with a close family member. And we saw the devastating effects that it had, and he received help, and we were able to walk with him through that. So I know it's a very, very real thing, but not for everybody. So you need to consider that. But I have one child who is very prone to, getting sucked in and wasting time. And as she's gotten older, we're now at the point where some mornings she'll come to me at 10 o'clock and say, just take my phone. Just take it. Don't give it back to me till I'm all done with this, this, and this, and this that I need to do, because she's realizing she's getting distracted. And I'd rather her figure that out now while I'm her cheerleader and her support system in that, than her figure that out in 5 years when she's 20 years old and she's at work and not being productive because she's on Instagram or whatever. So,
one of the things that really bugs me about the things that are written about, kind of the brain science of screen time and all that, is that, you'll often hear about like, the brain scans of people who are using technology compared to the brain scans of people who are using drugs. And here's the thing. They look the same because they're both activating the pleasure sensors of the brain, which is also activated by running, by sex, by first love, right? Like the same pleasure sensors of the brain are being activated. And so we talk about it like, we have this impression in our minds of like, okay, we know that long-term drug use leads to people who like just are never quite the same, and there's long-term brain damage. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like a single scan and, look, it's highlighting the same areas of the brain as, heroin use or something. But this is not a new thing. Like studies were done a long time ago about the comparison between heroin use and first love, because it's that same intensely pleasurable feeling. And, if you've ever walked through like with a middle schooler or a 10th grader after they get dumped by their first crush, like you're dealing with like wild mood swings and, like weepy meltdowns and, because they're coming down off this intense pleasure high. And so it is right for us to say, okay, look, this is a really attractive, super pleasurable thing. And like you just said, we know some of our children are going to be like, oh, that was fun. And others are going to be like, okay, I would be on this until 2 a.m. if I don't, put some restrictions in place. And so we don't say, well, there's nothing to be concerned about. But we also don't say like, oh, no, there's some like hidden magic behind the screen that will reach out and like, poke my child in the brain and ruin them and will have no symptoms of it. Like your daughter who struggles, that she's struggling, like you're watching the effects of it and you can deal with those actual observable things. It's not like, everything is going to appear totally fine. And then in 20 years, she'll just be brain dead,
Right. Well, and
like it's happening in front of you.
And I'm letting her fail. I'm letting her struggle with it, because if she doesn't feel those effects now while I'm here as her safety net, while she's in our home and safe and all that, she's going to run into them later when she doesn't have that support. So that's an important thing.
Yep.
And
that's right.
That what you just shared, Lynn, I hadn't heard that before about the brain scans. That's an excellent point. And I'm curious, if they went and did a brain scan of your husband after 8 hours of doing his spreadsheets, would it still be activating those same pleasure areas? Because
it might be activating the sleep sensors.
I know, but it's like, okay, so so somebody who's spending 8 hours compulsively watching YouTube, you don't put that in the same bucket as somebody who's spending 8 hours for their job analyzing spreadsheets. You just don't do that.
Right. And, there have been studies that talk about the effects of the light on your eyes. And it, if you're like staring at your phone at 10 o'clock at night, it makes your brain think that it's daytime. And so then you have, a harder time falling asleep. But again, all of these things are like observable. They're not like this, secret, insidious thing that's happening. If you're saying like, gosh, I'm having trouble sleeping. What could it be? Well, do a simple Google search and you're going to find like, okay, you need to turn off your devices earlier, or you need to, use a blue light filter.
Right. And now there are things, 3, 4, 5 years ago, there wouldn't be a solution, but now there is as the problems are developing. And I will say we do have a standard in our home that after 20 minutes of being on the computer, my children need to take a 15-minute break so that they get in that habit of, oh, I will get up and walk around and get something to eat and rest my eyes and all that. So that is something that I hold them to. And to be honest, I wish that translated to me. I don't have that habit. I hope they have it when they're adults and they're working on the computer for jobs, that they'll remember, oh, I need to get up and move around, because I find I can sit for 2 hours straight and not move.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Another thing, about these studies is a lot of times what they're talking about, they're treating it as though it's a causation. This happens and therefore this happens. But really what they're looking at is correlation. So for example, kids who spend X amount of time on screens also have weight problems, or also have sleep problems, or also have learning problems, or whatever. But they really can't prove that A causes B. What they're saying is we see A and B and C together. And there's a study that came out pretty recently, like within the last 6 months, that talks about maybe A isn't causing B. Maybe both A and B are caused by the parenting styles in the home, right?
Yes,
so,
maybe.
If you don't want to be very involved with your child, and you don't want to encourage them to go outside, and you don't want to encourage them to be makers and creators, not just consumers, then maybe you're going to say excessive screen time and, weight problems and overeating and, like all of these things connected together, because it's a lack of involvement. It's not that, this is a, perfectly healthy family and they just happen to allow a little too much screen time, and then it just ruined, other areas of life.
Right. Yes. I agree.
Okay. We've got one more question to squeeze in here. Amy says, I've enjoyed using online classes periodically for my kids the last couple of years, but I've found the retention is so poor compared to other modes of learning. Is this common or related to my child's learning style or the type of online class? Thanks for your thoughts. And Amy, I'm going to let Beth start chatting about this, but maybe if you could drop in the comment box the ages of your children, because that might help her to give a more informed answer.
I don't have an answer. I will be the first to admit that I'm not an expert about everything techie and online learning. I haven't experienced that. I guess my question for you, Amy,
It's Amy.
Is your child, are those classes of things that they're interested in and passionate about? Because I could put a book in front of my child about, I don't know, let's see, and about horticulture, and my child doesn't care about, or about botany. My child doesn't care about that. So they'll just go through the work and that'll be that, and they'll be done with it. So I guess that's my first question. And it may be the child's learning style. I mean, if you've got a kinesthetic learner, somebody who's, needs to be actively involved, touching, feeling, and all that, a video class isn't going to cut it for them, if they need to be, if they're a more tactile learner. So I guess I would need to know a little bit more about your child to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, that is a great point, Beth, because I definitely think that it's like comparing apples and oranges in terms of, because my kids are constantly coming to me and saying, hey, did you know such and so? I learned that on a TED Ed video. Or, oh, yeah, Abraham Lincoln, I watched a brain pop thing about him. And, and it was like, oh, I didn't even assign that or ask you to do that. But because it was something of interest to them, they just sucked it up.
Right.
So,
yeah. And as opposed to you maybe putting them, in a class that they don't care and they're just going through the motions. And I find that even we do that, we feel like, oh, our kids need to learn these things, maybe have state requirements or something like that. I'd be curious to know if that child, if they're going to retain more about that same subject, if they had learned about it in a different way. That's when you'd know if it was a child's learning style or not, I think.
So maybe some direct comparison, like this same subject in a video versus a paper book or some other mode of, or maybe a hands-on approach.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what would be engaging.
Or how engaging was the video, like a brain pop that's like animated and, designed just for kids. Yeah, that's probably going to have more of a impact than somebody just, doing a video, blah, blah, blah kind of talk,
Yeah. Oh, Amy says their ages 10 and 11. So yeah, I think all the things you said definitely apply to that age range.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, thank you so much for persevering to be on here with us tonight. And I guess God's just keeping us humble. We're having a conversation about technology and who knows what, something just funny happening tonight.
Yes, I just need to add. So an important thing, if you are doing a lot of homeschooling online, is don't skimp on your router. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'll have many people online. And that's why I do have a pretty high-end router. But I think this program is taking a lot of the juice. And I had a child online at the same time as we were talking. That's why we kept freezing. But this is something I didn't know until just a couple of years ago, is just don't count on your browser that, your internet service provider gives you. We have two. So there's that one that brings a signal in, but then we have another more higher powered router that sends the signal out on the Wi-Fi to all the different devices, because we don't have anything hardwired anymore. So anyway, that problem was that's just object lesson there on
good to know.
Lesson on the importance of having a good router if you're doing a lot of techie homeschooling.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. That's an awesome tip. I did not know that. Yes. So filing that away for further information.
Oh, and even Wi-Fi extenders. We don't need one because our house is too small, but there are boxes that you can place around your house that then will boost the signal a little
one of those
further.
Because we had like the front upstairs of our house, which is where my room is, was getting a terrible Wi-Fi signal. Yeah. So okay. Well, so guys, step one, if you want more information on all the kinds of things Beth has talked about, is to click on that green button, Techie Homeschool Mom, to pop you over to her website. You can definitely search for things, but then Beth and I will connect afterwards, and I'll grab all the links of all the goodies that she mentioned to put in the show notes, so that if you want to come over later on and look for those specifically, you can hop right to those things. And like I mentioned, I did put some links in the show notes about, I've written a couple articles about, is digital dangerous, and 10 reasons why parents fear screen time. So those might help you a little bit to read through those as well. And thank you, Beth, for being with us tonight.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.